Top 5 things you didn't know about plane crashes. In 2000, right before Alaska Air Flight 261 went into a second nosedive and slammed into the Pacific, she flew briefly in an inverted position upside down. As the final dive began, the cockpit voice recorder captured Captain Ted Thompson's world-class optimism. At least upside down we were flying. In light of high-profile disasters, here are 5 things you didn't know about plane crashes. Number 5. And number 5, there is a 0.00001% chance your plane will crash. One thing you didn't know about plane crashes is the figure Professor Jeff Rosenthal has arrived at to determine your chances of surviving your next flight. 99.99985%. Not bad. People enjoy dreaming up these odds, but their goal can't be to turn aerophobes into aerophiles. In fact, the better the odds seem to get, the more aerophobes stand their ground. Why? Because these figures fail to address the character and complexity of a phobia. After all, phobias are partly defined by their irrationality. The odds of dying in a plane crash are equal to quadruplets being born. But not just any quadruplets, naturally conceived quadruplets. And not just any naturally conceived quadruplets, but naturally conceived identical quadruplets. Forget the conception part. When's the last time you even saw a set of identical quadruplets? Number 4. Something to think about in number 4. Survival rates improve when the pilot ditches. The chief reason your survival rate spikes? Not what you might think. Sure, ditching is performed under somewhat controlled conditions and it trumps a nosedive, but survival rates for passengers are over 50% in these cases because ditching is an emergency procedure for which pilots and passengers are all offered training prior to every flight, the 2-minute drill mimed by the cabin crew. Number 3. Landing at number 3, planes routinely crash by running out of fuel. This unacceptable and totally egregious event goes by a sickeningly perfect name in aviation: fuel starvation, generally a consequence of leaks or extensive holding patterns. Avianca Flight 52 is an infamous example. A misunderstanding prevented air traffic controllers at JFK from grasping the crew's urgency. The craft lost all engines and crashed on Long Island. Unfortunately, the fate of Avianca 52 has already been shared by at least 5 other aircraft. Number 2. The first 90 seconds of a crash, known as golden time, is at number 2. According to the airline industry, what you do during golden time dictates whether or not you at least have a shot at surviving a plane crash. They frown on panicking. No surprises here and stress quick, decisive actions to get yourself as far away from the plane as you possibly can. Rummaging through your carry-on to spare your BlackBerry is frowned upon. According to witnesses, when their plane went down last September, Travis Barker and Adam Goldstein were frantically tearing their fiery clothes off, and this slightly prevented their burns from being more extensive. Number 1. You won't believe this, but at number 1, surviving a plane crash is good for you. At the American Psychological Association's annual convention in 1999, researchers from Virginia's Old Dominion University presented some unique findings. Plane crash survivors were healthier psychologically and lived with substantially less anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress than travelers who had never been involved in an aviation accident. The key seemed to be a question of control. To what extent did the survivor believe they had some control over the situation, even if that control was limited to what they did following impact? The greater the perception of control, the healthier the survivor will be. These people also tended not to need extensive counseling following the accident.